Hey all. So we have another war here. We just have two left, and somehow I seem to have become something of a Doom main. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. He pairs very well with the House of X pre-fight, gives him extra access to a lot of fights he might normally struggle with. He pairs extremely well with Reed, who also pairs very well with House of X. And I have all of them at rank 4, so it's not really that shocking. But I definitely did not plan to be taking this many Doom fights. Anyway, I've already taken this one this season. I think it was 2 wars ago that I showed y'all this. The basic plan is just throw special 3s. Although, this time, I do intend to actually knock him down before throwing the special 3. As comments pointed out, and as I knew, special 3s do seem to be bypassing protection right now, but I still think it's worth knocking him down beforehand because you get that passive fury in addition to your active one. And, at least theoretically, that should do more damage. I have no idea why I threw this. I really don't. It makes no sense. This was a complete and utter fumble. Oh, I remember why I threw that. Because I didn't think I was going to be at 2 bars yet. So that was a Mystic Dispersion mistake. I was misplanning how many buffs he had, and I thought that was going to be a special 1, not a special 2. So I was like, cool, I'm almost at 2 bars. I'll throw this special 1, I'll nullify some buffs, and I'll be at 3. That's what I was thinking. Obviously, that didn't happen, and the special 2 is a complete waste. It is what it is. Anyways, we knock him down again, throw this. Indestructible's on cooldown. The important thing to remember against Hulkling is just that he's immune to Power Steal, so you cannot do the normal Doom cycle and push him red and expect it to be safe. That is a fantastic way to get your butt kicked. But, short of that, works pretty well. I mean, works very well. And then we move on to Thing here. Now, we thought about splitting this path because I clearly don't have a hard Thing counter. Any of them could have taken it, realistically, but Reed is probably the worst, because of the way that his pre-fights interact with ebb and flow protection. He basically can't stack, and therefore you don't really have a chance to reverse willpower, and so his modified attack is more likely to trigger protection without getting something for it. So we don't want to do that. Magneto House of X is all about big hits, armor breaks, and bleeds, and Thing isn't metal, so again, absolutely not. Doom has class disadvantage, but has a little bit of power control, which for the most part we're going to try not to use, right? Because power control against Thing can actually make him scarier. But the important thing is that he does have that special 2 that's going to allow him to throw some big incinerates on Thing and do some real damage without worrying about protection. The other thing is that his special 3 can lock in a fair amount of damage before protection triggers, like you saw right there, and so he's going to be my guy. Alright, you get him to throw this, and I forget if no, I don't throw the special 2. I think I go straight back up to the special 3. Go ahead and knock him down for that. Oh no, I threw this. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because I get the heavy, I throw the special 2 to get the incinerates, and like I said, even without the fury from the special 3, that locked in a ton of damage. Now, why my dex didn't take there, I have no idea. I absolutely knew an unblockable special 1 was coming. I did try and prep for it, but whatever. It caught me. Stuff happens. Thankfully, Doom has a lot of armor, so it's not going to cost me a lot of potions. Yeah, so we tested the special 3, we tested the special 2. On average, the special 2 does more damage, requires fewer bars of power. Next time, I would only spam that. But, yeah. We had enough time to play with that we could afford to do some science and compare the two. And so we did. So we throw the House of X pre-fight on America and head back in with Doom. You've seen me do this as well. As I've said before, she's a little bit more difficult when you need to get an intercept against her. But here, even with the debuff immunity, it's just so easy to take her with almost anyone with the House of X pre-fight. Don't get me wrong, if you take her with somebody with buffs and or like without power control, it can go wrong because America Chavez is just rude. But the House of X pre-fight is probably the single most important thing for this fight because it's going to allow you to parry her and you don't have to worry as much about her heavy. And even better if you have power control, because then you don't have to dance around baiting her out, which also tends to lead to her throwing heavies. And so I really do think Doom in particular here, with that pre-fight, is the best counter. There are a few others, but this is just so simple. Not to mention it does so much damage. I mean, this is just a single Doom cycle for us. No debuffs needed. Alright, so moving on. First reason that I have Reed on the team is this Rintrah on 23. Spider-Man 2099 was banned, I believe. And so we could have done this with Titania, or there are plenty of options, honestly. Archangel is fantastic for Rintrah. But in my mind, this was just a Reed fight. Because I know that Reed can handle Bubble Shield really well. It makes it really easy to count with the parry heavies. Power Focus 2 isn't really an issue as long as you can survive whatever Special 2 the opponent has, which he's normally pretty good at because of his high evade chance. And his suppressions mean that above 2 bars of power, their combat power rate just completely stops. You're basically never going to push them red, which means you can be nice and aggressive and keep hitting them, and that makes keeping Scared Stiff off way easier. The Petrifies, of course, are going to reverse willpower healing and control any power gain whenever Rintrah does neutralize us, keep us away from a buff. And it's going to be really simple to just bait out the unblockable hits. Because even if I mistime them and I forget that we're at 10 bubble shield charges, if the opponent goes unblockable, Reed's evade chance bumps up quite a bit, and so it becomes that much easier to not get hit by it. I've kind of over-explained how good he is for this, but it's so nice. There's basically no threat at all to it. Rintrah is a good placement here because his long specials mean that you can get rooted, especially if you're worried about punishing him right after because it might trigger Mystic Dispersion and lead to just another special and you could end up getting backed up. But with Reed, you just don't really have to worry about any of those things, and that fight was super, super simple. Moving on to this Sersi, I've also taken this already this season. Basically, you expect return policy, you expect some big specials. You can absolutely dex them. I'm extremely comfortable against her Special 1. I go for the Special 2 dex in Battlegrounds. In War, especially here, it just didn't quite feel worth it. I'd rather heal. But yeah, we're just trying to make sure that if we do send her red, that we also have 2 bars of power. Honestly, I have no idea what happened there with that heavy. I must have just been slow on it. It happens. We go ahead and throw this, and again, the trick is to make sure that we do not send her red when we do not have a Special 3. It is completely fine to send her red, but we do not want to do it if we are not ready to power control. And there we go. Boom. It's really important in fights like this to be very cognizant of exactly how much Mystic Dispersion you're going to trigger, how much return policy the opponent is going to trigger, how often you nullify things, how many buffs are triggering that you are then staggering. Just keep in charge of that math, and these fights feel very predictable, even though return policy does make it technically more dangerous. So next up we have the Scorpion. I believe I took this earlier this season as well with House of X. I think that time actually went cleaner. If I remember correctly, he wasn't really behaving here. But it's a simple fight. It's just metal turns off most of the threats. You don't have to worry as much about the prowess. You do good damage. You can land those big degens. And House of X is a rank 4 that I'm not using again, so I'm not really worried about losing the HP race, and I'm not worried about him timing out. And yes, there's the first bit that I talked about with Scorpion not behaving. Just full combos or very near to full combos into block again and again and again because he's a jerk. Anyway, we're sticking to 4-hit combos, not 5. Honestly, it doesn't really matter because if Scorpion evades us, he's going to counterattack us and he's probably going to hit us anyway. But, you know, old habits die hard. For when you're dealing with somebody who might evade, I personally feel safer when I am shortening my combos. Things feel a bit more predictable. So obviously we lost the armor break because he's just being a complete jerk with timing, and also we do not have a lot of prowess in this fight. That's one of the biggest things that normally helps Magneto House of X prolong his effects. Both his cruelty and his armor up and degen, but we're just not getting it here. He doesn't have a ton of charges, 4 is not a lot for him, and we're not parry heavying. I could have if I had thrown on the Pacify Mastery like I talked about last time, but as I said, it was the last fight for him. It didn't matter how much health he lost. I just did not need to. So we move right on to Mordo here. Use another pre-fight that we got back for free from the last one. We're going to go ahead and use Reed. You can use Doom here. You absolutely can. It'd be a similar logic to the Sersi fight where you just have to manage return policy and predict it. But personally, I think that Reed is actually the harder counter because you're just going to turn off so much of the node. As long as you can parry heavy, which the pre-fight allows us to do, there's not a whole lot going on here. We can back him up to the corner, heavy through his block if we need to. If he does throw his specials at us, we're likely to evade them. If he does somehow go to a special 3, it's probably not going to hurt between Inequity and the Careful Study. I'm just not scared of Mordo with Reed and House of X basically anywhere. Now that is the one thing that can go wrong, and that I have had go wrong on this node before. Technically, putting the falter on them when you heavy your special is a good thing, but in my experience it always seems to interrupt when I really want a parry. And so I actually kind of wish that it didn't put the falter on them. But it is what it is, we get used to it. It just throws a special one out of nowhere there. I actually thought we might get the Careful Study on the special too, which doesn't happen very often in war fights. But that's alright. This is completely over now. We have him reversing his own power gain, gaining almost nothing from combos, and we're hitting pretty hard. So very clean fight there against Mordo, and we move on to Wong. This is a solid placement. Wong is annoying, especially with Spider-Man 2099 gone, but I honestly don't love him here because you can parry him. And if you parry Wong and never allow him to charge heavy, he doesn't have any ability power rate. Or sorry, he doesn't have any ability power, which means that a boosted ability power rate isn't really going to help him. Now, he could have heavy charge there. I missed the initial parry, and that is the one risk. Did it twice in a row. But that's really all there is. He does have a chance of going unstoppable while he's in the blue mode whenever we gain a buff. But that just, it doesn't matter here. He goes ahead, throws his unblockable special too. Like I said, that is going to skyrocket Reed's evade chance. I think I did go for the dex there, but it didn't matter. We dealt with his whole Eldritch Energy thing, because again, if you can heavy him, there's not a whole lot of threat to him. We've now really cut into his combat power rate. So I think he's only gained 3 bars of power so far this fight, and he's already down to 30%. This is just super simple. I forget if I actually... Okay, he finally did that. And you see, he does gain some power, even though we're ramped, because that's how this node works. If we had been a little sloppy early on and he had done that a few times, we maybe could have had a problem. But he didn't, and we didn't. So this was a fun war. Got to use Reed and House of X, and that made it worth bringing Doom, who is very good. And we did donut this war. We did not die at all as a battle group, including to some very difficult fights. Our opponents had a rank 5 thing on defense, so we had to deal with that for the first time this war, but didn't drop any. So really, really proud of everybody in BG3. It's been a fantastic season. That's our second donut of the season, and we've had several other only 1 or 2 death clears. It's been a good one. Here's hoping we can close it out on a good note. And until then, thanks so much for watching, and take care.